Okay guys, this is the first time I'm trying to do something like this, but here I'm going to be showing you how to create your first app, your first web app using .NET, ASP.NET MVC. So ASP.NET, as you know, is a framework by Microsoft, and it uses the C# language primarily. And I'm going to be assuming that you know a little bit about C# and you know some HTML, and we're going to jump into it. So the app that we're going to be creating is called the calculator input screen. As you can see, it has a field. You put in a first number, it has an operator, it has a second number, an equal button, and it gives you a result. Very simple. So I'll demonstrate how it works. Say 10, we're going to be adding 10 plus, let's say 10 plus 5, 10, add 5, and that will be equal to 15. If I say 10 subtracting 5, 10 subtracting 5, that will be equal to, you guessed it, 5. 10 multiplied by 5 will be equal to 50. And 10 divided by 5 will be equal to 2. Alright, so we're going to jump into the app. This is the back end and stuff like that, but I'm going to be showing you exactly what we go through in order to reach the stage. Alright, so I'm going to be closing this solution. Yes, I'm going to stop debugging. I'm going to be closing the solution, and I'm going to be starting a new project. So we go to File, New Project, and we're going to be using a .NET web application. So we select the first one, and if you go onto the side, you'll see some templates, and we are going to be choosing templates, visual, C#, web, and in the web templates we have three templates, but we're going to be using the first one, which is ASP.NET web application. Alright, so let's give our web app a name. Let's call it Calc App, for want of a better way of putting it, Calc App. Alright, and we're going to be clicking OK. And we're not going to be starting with an empty form. We're going to be starting with a web form. So we select web form and we click OK. So what .NET is doing, C# is doing, it's building the project for you, so you don't have to start from the very beginning. It builds the components for you. So essentially, when it comes up, all you need to do is start building. We go over to our Solutions Explorer and we right click on the project, which is Calc App. So we're going to be right clicking on it, and we go to add, and we add a new item. So in the new item, we have a bunch of templates that we can choose from, but what we're going to be using this template, web form with master page. That's because we don't want to create a new page from scratch. We want it to be able to be linked with the master page, because there is a master page that controls all the other pages in your web application. So if we make a web form with master, it simply means that you won't have to start from scratch, and when you click on your link at the top of your page, you will be able to go to your web app that you're creating instead of having to create the link from scratch. So we're going to be calling this our calc app.aspx, right? Calc app.aspx. Make sure it's web form with master page, and we click on add. When we click on add, it brings us to this panel. Simply select site master. So we click on site master, and what comes up, we have a blank application. So if we open our site master, which is this file at the side, we can see that there's a bunch of HTML and stuff here, and a bunch of C# code, and a bunch of some other extra stuff. But if you notice right here, we see content placeholder, right? This is where your app will be. So you see content placeholder here, and if you go over to your Calc app, you see the content, right? This is essentially where the placeholder is on your main page. Wherever you see on your site master, where you see the placeholder, this is where your app will go. Okay, so we're going to go inside of this tag, the ASP.NET content tag, and we're going to be going to our design view. Okay, so in our design view, we want to create a table, and this table is going to have a few rows and a few columns. So at this point, it has 2 rows. We're going to be having, remember, we're going to be having 1 row for the, we're going to be having 2 rows. 1 row has the field, the label, and the other row has the input. All right, or we can do it 1 row. Now let's do 2 rows. So we have 2 rows, but we have several columns. So the first column is for the first number. The second column will be for the addition, subtraction, the operator. The third column will be for the second number. The fourth column would be for the button, equal, the submit button. And the fifth column will be our result. So we need 5 columns. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Right, now that we have clicked OK, we're going to add a label right there, and our label will be number 1, right? And we're not going to put anything in the second table, second cell. We're going to be adding another label, and we're going to be calling this label number 2. And then we're going to be skipping over that other cell, and then we're going to be having result. It may seem a little bit weird now, but you get the idea of what I'm trying to get afterward. You saw how it looked on our main page, so we're only setting it up like that. All right. So under here, we're going to be going down, and we're going to be trying to find a text box. We're going to put in the text box right there. And we're going to be putting the text, another text box under number 2, because this is where you're going to put in the second number. And we're going to be putting a button where we have the equal sign, and we're going to give this button a label shortly, and then we're going to be putting another label. This is where the result is going to be displayed. All right, good. So right here, we're going to be having what you call a drop down list. I think that's what it's called, drop down list, right? So we're going to put it right here. All right, so once you put in your drop down list, you're going to edit the items in the drop down. All right, so first you're going to go down to add, and then you see a list item come up. We're going to be calling this first one add, and the value, meaning what behind the scenes when you actually start to code it, this, whenever you select this button add, this is what the computer will see, the value of it, right? So we're going to be using the plus button or the addition button. So we're going to do that for the other operators. So next one will be subtract. I think that's how it's spelled. And we're going to have that minus button. Third one, we're going to be using multiply, if I could spell properly, multiply. And this one will have the asterisk, yeah, it's going to be that sign. And we're going to be having the fourth one is going to be divide. And this symbol is going to be the /. All right, so we have our operators, and we're gonna be clicking OK. Now, there's one thing I didn't do that I should have done. I should have put a label here, because I'm gonna give this label operator. So I'm going to be putting a label here, and I'm just going to be writing operator. All right. So here we are going to be giving this button a label, and we're going to be what should we call it? Equal, submit. All right, I'm not sure. So we're going to be right clicking on the button, right click, go to properties. When you go to properties, you see text. The text would be the actual name, that word that is written on the button. So we're going to select button, and we're going to be calling it, we're going to be saying, say, equal, wait a second, equal or submit. I don't know, something. You can be creative. All right, down here, the ID of the button, when you're coding behind the scenes, you're gonna want to call the button by a certain name, right? You're not going to be calling it by the name submit. This here is what the user sees. You see that on the web page, but behind the scenes, you will need to access the button. You'll need to call it something. So in C# we have a naming convention. This is kind of how it is done in the industry, at least so I've been told, because I'm really not that good at C# myself. But we're going to be calling it BTN, which stands for button, and we're going to be using a capital and uppercase S, BMIT. So BTN for button, button submit. This kind of writing is called camel case, where the first word is lowercase and the second word and every word afterward is uppercase. So this is camel case. All right. So that's the ID of the button. We're going to have to give these some IDs as well. So right click, properties, the ID, because we're going to want to be able to say, hey, I want the number from this text box, and I want the number from this text box. What am I saying, right? So we're going to be calling this TXT for text, and then we're going to be calling it something like number 1. Okay, and we're going to do the same for this one. We right click on it, and we're going to be calling this TXT number 2, right? And because we're going to want to, after we add these two numbers and we click submit, we're going to want to put the result here. We have to give it a title. We have to say to it, this, when you add these two numbers, I want you to put the result here, right? So we're going to be calling LBL result. Okay, and while I'm here, let me just give it a name, result. This is what the user will see. So when I click on text, you see that changes. All right, so that pretty much sets up our calculator. I'm gonna be going back to the source view. So if I click back to the source view, we realize that it is this is what all that we just did. This is a code that C# or .NET developed for us, right? If we split the view, we can see that this here is highlighted whenever we click on the text button. This is highlighted when we click on this text box. Did I say button? Text box. And this, when we click on the submit button, this is created, see ID, submit, and such like. All right, so we're going to be working on the coding part now. So let's go ahead and save. And if you want to see how this looks in the browser, you can right click and say view in browser. All right, it's good to check as you go along, instead of doing everything and then at the end of it all you realize that you made a mistake and you want to change something. Yep. So see, our app is now up and running. All right, so application name, we're not going to be worrying about that. Number 1, you put in number 2. Now if I put something here, nothing happens because we haven't made any functionality. All right, so back in C#, we want to ensure that we have the functionality there. All right, so what we actually want to do, we can double click on this button so that when we click on the submit button, we want to code what happens. All right, so we can double click on it. When we double click on it, it jumps us to the code behind the scenes called code behind, right? And it generates this for us. As you can see, button submit click. This is what will happen when we generate the when we click on the submit button. All right, so what do we do now? So what we want to do, we are gonna create a variable called var, and I'm just gonna call it num1, and I'm going to make what will be the content of num1. The content of num1 will be this dot bt, this dot text txt num1 dot text, right? So what does this do? This says that I want num1 to be equal to this, whatever is in the first field, number field, I'm going to give it to num1. But at this moment, it's a string, like it's a word. We don't want that. We want it to be an actual number. So what we're going to do, we're going to say we're going to convert it into a decimal. So we're going to say convert dot to decimal, and then we're going to create open parentheses, close parentheses, and this tells it that, hey, you are now going to act as a number, a decimal number. All right, so we're going to do this the same. You know, as a matter of fact, let's just copy and paste this part, since it's essentially the same. So we're going to change this to number 2, and we're going to change it to number 2, text box 2. Remember, that's what we call this one, text box 2, right? All right, so now that we have that, okay, I made a mistake. It's not going to be selected item, it's going to be var operator is going to be this dot drop down list 1 dot selected value, right? Because we need the value coming from the operator. Whenever we select one of these values, it's going to be a string, and we're going to be selecting that, so it's going to be the value. All right, so what do we want to do now, right? So we want a way to say that if I'm going to, should I use a switch statement? No, I'm going to use an if-else statement. So an if-else statement essentially is making a decision, and that's what a computer does every day. If you think about it, a computer is really not that smart, right? It essentially says, if this is this way, then that must be that way, and if that is not that way, this is some way, or else this is going to be somewhere else. That's essentially what a computer does every day, every second, every millisecond, all the time. If this happens, that happens, else this else will happen. All right, so we're going to make an if-else statement. So we're going to say, we're going to make a result variable. So we're going to say that result is equal to 0m. What essential result, the m means that is just a way that C# defines a decimal value, because remember, we converted these to decimals, so the result must be a decimal value. Okay, so we're going to say if, and a shortcut and a shortcut, we say we type if, and then we press tab, and then we this comes up. So if if OPTR is equal to, and then we can say if it is equal to plus, if it is equal to plus, what are we going to do? We're going to say that result is equal to num1 plus num2. That makes sense, right? So if the operator is a plus operator, we're going to say that the result is going to be equal to num1 plus num1 plus num2, because it's going to be plus, right? We're using plus addition. All right. So if it is not that, we're going to say else if tab result, if operator optr, that's what we call it, is equal. Notice I'm using double equal sign. It's very important to use a double equal sign. If operator is equal to minus, then the result is equal to num1 minus num2, right? And notice I use a colon afterward, right? Else, and I told you this is what a computer does every day, else if, else if tab optr is equal to multiply, and to get out of that you simply need to press enter. I'm not sure why I'm not doing that, right? Result is equal to num1, you guessed it, asterisk, I can't call that name, what's wrong with me, right? Else, since this is the last one, all we need to say is else, right? Else the result is going to be result is equal to num1, and what's the last one we have? A divide sign, right? Num1 divided by num2. So the reason we said we don't have to put another if is logical, right? If you have 4 operators, if it is not the first one or the second one or the third one, then it must be the last one, right? So we say result is equal to num divided by that. All right, so moving right along, we're going to be pushing back this data now into the result field. So remember what we call the result field? I think we call it label result dot text is equal to result, and right now you won't be able to put the result in a text field because a text is a letter, so it's looking for that kind of data. But the result here is a decimal, remember? So in order for it to show, we need to convert it into a string. So we say toString, and we put the open and close parentheses, and that should be it, right? So if all goes well and we save this and we save this and we run it in our browser, we should have a working application. Okay, so now is the moment of truth. Let's see if our app is working. So we say 10, we're going to be adding 10 and 5. Once we press the submit button, let's see if our result comes. And we got it. 10 plus 5, and the result is 15, right? So if we say 10 subtract 5 sub 10, yeah, the English 10 minus 5, let's put it like that. 10 minus 5, the result should be 5, and that is correct. If we say 10 multiplied by 5, the result should be 50. And if we say 10 divided by 5, the result should be 2. Now there you have it, your first simple calculator app using MVC.NET MVC, right? So you can go experiment, you can make it prettier. I didn't make it pretty. I essentially just made an app so that you could use. So if we go back into Visual Studio, just to recap, so we have our components, we have our text area, text box 1, and we call it text number 1, as you can see right here. We have another text what we call text number txt number 2. We have our submit button that we call btn submit, and we have our result. So these are the things that we set up. These are what the user will see. And when we go behind the scenes now, all the magic happens behind the scene. We create variables for these fields. So for the first box, for this box, we said we're going to calling it num1. So we convert it to a decimal, and we store and we put this decimal value into the first number. So the first number will come from the first text box, and the second number is going to be the second text box. And remember, the reason we convert it into a decimal is because this is a text box, and text box gets text values, but we want a number value, right? So we have to convert it into a string. And then the operator, we wanted the value from the operator. Remember, we had 4 of them, and the operator, we say the operator will be a variable of optr, and it gets the selected value. So whatever the user selects, that is the value that is going to go into this operator. And we made a variable called result that we can store the result into, right? And then we had this block of code where we said we're essentially instructing the computer to do this. If the operator, if the user selects add, it's going to give this sign, because remember when we made this, I'm not sure if I can show it to you right here, but maybe I can't. Oh well. But when we made this, we said that if the user selects add, it's going to give this symbol. If the user selects subtract, it's going to give this signal symbol. And if the user selects multiply, it's going to give the asterisk, and if the user selects divide, it's going to give this. So we say if the user selects this, we're going to add the 2 numbers. If the user selects subtract, we're going to subtract these 2 numbers. If the user selects multiply, we're going to multiply these 2 numbers. And if the user selects divide, we're going to divide this number. And after dividing these numbers, or after doing the operation, and the user selects submit, we're going to put the text into this part of it, this label. Remember, it's a text feed. A label is text, is word. So what we have to do is say, hey, label, we're going to give you something, but I know that you don't like numbers, you like strings, right? So I'm going to make the result, which is a number, I'm going to make it into a string just so that I can please you. So that's what we did. We say the text, the label result text will get the result to string, and then we have our app, right? I hope this was useful, and you can use this to create other apps. Maybe you can make a small game. Maybe if you want to say, hi, my name is, and then you print out the name. This could be what is your name? You put your name here, and then you click submit, and you see the name right here. I don't know, it's up to you, right? But that's the end of lesson for today. It went longer than I expected, but I hope you do understand. All right, see you.